we all love perfumes, but why is there no Indian representation? And India has a rich tradition of perfumery, but where's the Indian representation? Essentially, all three of us decided, look, if we looks like no one's going to do this, and if we don't try, then, well, no one else is going to try. So we said, why not? Let's just quit our jobs and give it a genuine go. I think initially we thought, oh, maybe we'll just launch, and once we launch, we can figure all this out. But we obviously very early on realized that's not the way to go. You want to build enough traction, you want to build a community. For us, it was very clear that if we did this as a part-time side hustle, this would never be what we wanted to be. The way we want our brand to be represented, only we can understand that.
Did you guys use any sort of AI tools or anything like that to kind of help you along that journey?
Absolutely. I honestly think what we managed to do with our design and branding, we probably wouldn't have been able to do this much if we hadn't had the help of some of the AI tools that are out there.
So first of all, again, thank you so much for doing this, man. I discovered Rahasya a couple of weeks back. It was like an Instagram post that my sister sent to me. It's like, hey, check this brand out. They're based in Singapore. They look really cool. And I saw your Instagram, and I was just hooked, man. Like the way you do content, the product quality just speaks on your page itself. And I was totally bought in from day one. And then I saw that you were there on your social media feed, kind of also taking people through your journey of building this. So that's, again, I think really good and really next gen, new age founder mentality that I really like. So, I mean, just for the people listening, right? You are one of the three co-founders of Rahasya, which is, if I was to put it in one sentence, it's a luxury perfume brand with a mission to put Indian-inspired niche perfumery on the global. Do I have it right?
Yeah, I think spot on. Yeah.
All right. But maybe, just if you could take 2-3 minutes to talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and also a bit about Rahasya in detail, more than this one sentence that I just spoke about right now. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe a little bit about myself first. I was born in India, and then I moved to Singapore when I was very young. And I've been here now for, way more than 2 decades, and ended up becoming a Singaporean citizen. But it's this whole dynamic of course, I am Singaporean and I grew up here, but I do have strong Indian roots. And, I do visit India fairly often. So about myself, what I studied versus what I worked in versus what I'm doing now, there's absolutely no connect. I studied politics, philosophy, and economics. I ended up working in ad tech. So I was working in Meta and TikTok. So again, more on the business development and sales side of things. And then I worked in Boston Consulting Group for a short while as well. And essentially left sometime in end of December or January this year, actually, to start Rahasya. So again, no link with, my educational and my corporate background with what I'm doing now. Why Rahasya started, I think it goes back to the initial portion which I was talking about, which is I was born in India, but, grew up in Singapore. And there's always been this desire to want to connect with my roots. And for me, that comes through as a consumer. I like to purchase products and support businesses that put a little bit of that Indian story through their business. So, whether it's buying shoes, whether it's buying clothes, I'm always on the lookout for businesses and brands that I feel like, hey, I can connect with the story a little bit. This represents a little bit of me. So essentially, my 2 friends and I, Utkarsh and Sachit, we started chatting about, hey, in the perfumery space, we all love perfumes, but why is there no Indian representation? A lot of the fragrances, if you look at the brands that people buy, they're buying from the Middle Eastern brands, French brands, or if you think of the bigger designer brands, then obviously they're all over the world, but they're still largely Western designer brands. So we just felt like our roots, we all grew up overseas, but our roots are still Indian, and India has a rich tradition of perfumery, whether it's the heritage aspect of attars, or even in the modern sense, a lot of the ingredients are actually originating and sourced from India for perfumes. but where's the Indian representation? Like, we as a consumer living outside of India can't find a perfume brand that we can connect with and are excited to go purchase, and we can basically wear that on a regular basis. So essentially, all three of us decided, look, if we looks like no one's going to do this, and if we don't try, then well, no one else is going to try. So we said, why not? Let's just quit our jobs and give it a genuine go.
Awesome, man. So you said you quit your job in Jan 2024, but you guys launched somewhere, just in November, October, November, right, for pre-orders and stuff.
Yeah.
So that like sort of 10-month journey, and I saw this on your Instagram as well, right? What did you do in those 10 months? You just packed up everything from Singapore and you three went to India, you traveled. Like, how did you figure out the scene, and how did you do that learning curve of learning about this industry and product in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest, the past 10 months since we quit the job, between all three of us quitting our jobs to us launching Rahasya, were probably the busiest I've ever been in my life. I think if I were to break down, our 10 months into three clear buckets, one would be figuring out the product itself. And by product, I mean everything from perfumes, the perfume itself, so the creation of the perfume, all the way down to, things like packaging, things like bottles, and then, figuring out how to basically build the product that we're looking to have from a physical perspective. The second bucket would be all things around how do you have your design and marketing in place. So everything from how do we want our brand to look? How do we want it to be represented? What is the right time to start building a public presence so that we can start a little bit of excitement and you can say hype. Because I think initially we thought, oh, maybe we'll just launch, and once we launch, we can figure all this out. But we obviously very early on realized that's not the way to go. You want to build enough traction. You want to build a community, take people along your journey with you. So that was very key for us, which is the whole marketing branding bucket. And then the third bucket was all things around logistics. And in today's day and work, everything around logistics, regulation, the regulatory requirements, because we are dealing with chemical products, all the way down to the more, basic administrative things like, incorporating a business and figuring out funding, all those elements. So those would be the three things we're focusing on. Our actual product building. So everything from perfumes, packaging, the actual physical product, then the marketing and branding, the more tangible soft assets. And then of course, the third bucket would be the practicals, which is the regulatory, the administrative stuff, the financial stuff, figuring all those things out.
Awesome. And so you did this kind of three bucket steps for the first 9-10 months. And so when did you know that you were kind of ready to launch, A? And B, what was your launch strategy around this? Because you're entering with a premium product, that is competing against, as you previously said, right, a very established industry, which is dominated by like designer brands, and probably at that price point, right? So what was your launch and positioning strategy there?
For us, you're absolutely spot on. The fragrance industry, or even the beauty industry in general, I think it's still very much led by brand perception, and of course, quality matters. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to branding. Now, we as a new entrant into the market, we knew that for us, branding would be key. But more importantly, people would have to resonate with what we as a brand stand for. I think that very early on was clear to us. It's the only way we would survive. If we just launched a fragrance brand with some name and, some very airy-fairy mission, and then a product that has no story around it, no way of building a connection, it's impossible to survive. It's just the truth. So for us, it was very clear from the start that our brand story has to be incredibly strong. People need to connect with what we're standing for. We have to, as a brand, be more than just about perfumes. We have to stand for something bigger than just perfumes. And for us, it was very clear. It's why we started Rahasya, which was the whole idea of connection to India. So I think for us, it was we wanted to anchor everything around building a connection to India as an outside-in lens. So that was the very, overarching thing that we wanted to start off with. The positioning was on connection, and then comes to the actual storytelling itself. What we realized early on is the story doesn't just have to be at a brand level, but it also has to be at a product level. So when we're building the product itself, if you notice fragrance brands out there, like you buy a Tom Ford, Oud Wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frankly, as a consumer, I would buy it because it's Tom Ford. There's something aspirational about me when I purchase a Tom Ford, and I feel like, I purchased a Tom Ford and I can show off to my friends that I'm wearing a Tom Ford. As a brand, we don't have that pull. But what we can have is storytelling and connection. So if we, for example, create a product like Tom Ford's Oud Wood doesn't have a story around it that they really market. But for us, we knew that we wanted that story. People buy Rahasya perfumes because they connect with what the perfume itself says, not just because of how it smells, but it's because of what the perfume represents about them, because of the story. So for example, one of our fragrances is inspired by Indian bookstores. And for us, it was very clear that as a fragrance, not only did this fragrance have to capture the aroma of it, the smell of that bookstore and the feel of it, but it also has to have a bigger meaning and mission, which is, this is a fragrance that's honestly trying to shed light on how bookstores are depleting. We're going from a world that was analog to something that's very digital. And as amazing as that is, you're also losing a really essential part of culture. So for us, it's the whole storytelling, and also, we want to stand for more than just a product. Even the product needs to tell a story and stand for something on its own. So that, I would say, was what we were really focused on building in those initial 10 months.
That's the first time I've heard that sort of like 2-layer approach, where it's like the overall brand is important, but then the product within it also has a brand of its own that attracts people, right? And that's kind of genius in my opinion, because as you said, right, like today as a consumer, I don't know Rahasya if I don't follow you on social media or if I don't have a personal connection. But I can still get attracted to you from that new novel product approach. And that's just quite interesting, honestly, because I've never seen that idea anywhere. And I think for someone building a new brand, especially in a very competitive luxury space where value matters a lot, I think that's a really good tip. But that brings me to the question, right? Like all three of you, I'm assuming, are first time founders, correct?
Yeah.
That's how did you get so much clarity about all this, right? Because a lot I speak to a lot of founders these days, and a lot of them talk about how it's very difficult to get that clarity, and you have to go through multiple iterations before you get that. So what did the brainstorming of this look like? Like, whose brainchild was this?
It was, truth be told, and this is not politically correct answer, but the truth is, it really took equal parts of all three of our brains. So the three of us, myself and my two other co-founders, we're all friends from before. So of course that helps with a little bit of understanding each other, understanding what we're individually good at and not good at. We do have slightly complementary skill sets. But I think at the end of the day, it came down to the bigger mission of, one is, of course, as a brand mission to represent Indian perfumery and things like that, but Indian inspired perfumery. But I think at the more core of it, I would say the fact that the two things, the fact that we quit our jobs was important. For us, it was very clear that if we did this as a part-time side hustle, this would never be what we wanted to be. It would always be an afterthought, and we wouldn't put so much thought into it if we hadn't gone all in on it. So of course, it's a big risk. And of course, all three of us are incredibly grateful for our family and friends for all their support. Because not everyone has this luxury, but thankfully all three of us can afford this. That was important for us, all three of us going all in at the same time. But I think the second thing also is, like I said, our goal when we started this was, we just wanted to create the product that we as consumers would love to have in our hands. And we basically started with, let's forget what what we want to build as a business, and let's honestly just put on the consumer shoes always. So every step of the process, we just kept thinking as a consumer and kept thinking, what is it that we as a consumer are looking for in other brands and not finding on the market? Let's build that. Let's build what excites us. Let's put a little bit of our interest, our personality into this, all three of us. And of course, there's healthy debates because everyone's got different preferences, but it was very much let's put the consumer hat on at every step of the journey, right from the product all the way down to the branding, all the way down to, the entire, as a brand, what we're standing for. Just everything was from, let's think from a consumer lens and specifically what we as consumers want to see in a brand.
Be your own first customer, especially
Exactly.
in consumer, right? I think that's such a golden advice, and amazing to hear that you guys actually went through with it, thought it about, so perfectly, and kind of are executing it on it so well now. So on the point of branding, right? I as a outsider was attracted to your brand because of the impeccable design. Your mission was very novel. I've never seen this somewhere, but your design, your social media. So did you guys hire someone externally for this, or is that something that you thought about yourself?
We haven't hired anyone. Thank you so much, by the way. I mean, for us, it means a lot when we hear that people are resonating with the design and the branding. For us, there was no external input in branding or design. Truth be told, we did initially reach out to a design agency and started working a little bit, but very quickly we realized that the way we want our brand to be represented, only we can understand that. And we ourselves sometimes don't have the clarity of thought because we're building the brand as we go along as well. So of course, our own design thinking evolves with time. So it came to a point where we did start working with someone else, and we realized actually to do justice to this brand and to do justice to how we ourselves are defining this brand better as we go along, we have to do this ourselves. Now, all three of us, neither of us are designers. But I think, again, it comes to the point of we just felt like we can teach ourselves and let's do it. If we really, what we put out at the end of it is not good, then we'll get external help. But let's learn. I'm sure, there's so many resources online. Let's do this ourselves. Let's try and, teach ourselves the tools we need to learn, and let's play around and let's do this. And of course, this would mean that there were many, 2, 3 a.m. nights trying to just figure out how to use Adobe Substance or things like that, 3D rendering models, all this stuff. But I would say it was a lot of doing things in-house, figuring it out, because for us, it was important that the only way we can be happy with our design language is if we ourselves go through that journey of building it individually and as a team.
Did you guys use any sort of like AI tools or anything like that to kind of help you along that journey?
Absolutely. I honestly think, what we managed to do with our design and branding, we probably wouldn't have been able to do this much if we hadn't had the help of some of the AI tools that are out there. I mean, of course, there's tools for image generation, things like Midjourney. There's tools for video, converting still images to adding some motion into it. There's Runway ML, there's Pika Art, there's Kling AI, there's a few. And then, of course, there's ChatGPT for idea generation. But I think in general, AI has been incredibly helpful for us. Midjourney especially. For example, in the process of thinking about what are design ideas, of course, there are existing resources like Pinterest to get inspired. But if we wanted to have an idea that's completely out of the box and we wanted a quick way of visualizing what this would look like, we would go to Midjourney and we would type in what we're envisioning and see how it would be represented, because AI can do that. It can do it really fast and do it pretty well. And then, of course, through this process, we also got very good at prompting. And the thing with a lot of these AI tools is it comes down to how you prompt it. And once you crack the knack, once you crack how to prompt it properly, these tools are incredibly powerful. Very, very powerful. Yeah.
So let's say today I'm conceptualizing a brand, right? Let's say I want to create a protein bar brand and I have a couple of value propositions in mind. I go to ChatGPT or Midjourney. Let's take Midjourney for example. Like, how should I kind of do the prompt to kind of have, let's say I want to create a launch video, right, of my protein bar. Like, in what way should I give out the information such that I get like really high quality ideas?
So Midjourney would be more on the visual side of things. I would probably, say that just for idea generation from a broader lens, of course, ChatGPT is fantastic for it. And you can have multiple ideas coming out of that. Midjourney is fantastic for generating static assets. So, for example, if you mentioned the protein bar, how I would probably think of it is that I would have some initial idea of how I want it represented, and then I would use AI to basically take it 2, 3, 4 levels above, so that I can think outside my own parameters and my own box. When I think protein bars right now, I think colors. I think the logo on the top, and then at the back you have the nutrition label, and then of course in the front you'll have 20 grams of protein. There's this one brand, and I keep forgetting the name of it, but it's the one that, it's basically, when you look at it, all it has is 0 grams carbs, 20 grams protein, 2 grams fat. They basically put the nutrition label as their front of the protein bar. I don't know
Is
if
it
you...
is it David? Is it David?
It could be David. It could be David.
Is it a golden wrapper?
I
Uh
think so. I think so. I'm not sure.
okay,
Not sure.
okay.
But I think it comes to the point of, like, those are slightly out of the box ideas that
Hmm.
take what's existing and
Hmm.
change it. And I think AI
Yeah.
is great for visualizing those from a product lens. And then from a more practical branding lens, AI is great for generating assets that could potentially be used in socials, maybe on
Hmm.
website. It's a great and easy way. Instead of always going through a photography route, you can
Hmm.
generate high quality assets as well that can be used.
Awesome, man. Like, I always thought that AI, yes, you can get it, you can use it for a bit of efficiency here and there. But people always say that, like, for example, Chat GPT you mentioned, right? It's basically going to give you uh ideas based on the context that has been fed to it. So you're saying that it can actually give you really out of the box ideas, whereas the general consensus even right now is like, it's only going to give you what's out there already because it has this information fed in. So that's quite interesting, man.
I
Like,
will say though, it all comes down to, I mean, if it's not that these tools are miracle tools, it's that the tools have to be put to the right use.
Mhm.
And that's where it helps to have your own, for us, it was important that we had to, whatever we thought was the base, those are things that we don't want, because we want to think outside the box ourselves.
Mhm.
So it helps to have an initial idea of what some of those out of the box ideas are. And then, of course, a lot of it comes down to prompting. I think ChatGPT is a much simpler tool, but there's a lot of other tools out there. For example, Runway ML is great for uh, converting static into videos.
Mhm.
It's not perfect. I think it's still, 1 or 2 years away from being an incredibly
Mhm.
high fidelity tool, but you can still extract value out of it if you know how to use it. And that comes from just experimentation and figuring out what prompts are working, what isn't.
Mhm. But then presumably, like, it gets you like 70% of the way, and then you kind of have to extract it and
Yeah,
use more sophisticated tools like Adobe Premiere
absolutely.
to kind of
Absolutely.
finish those things off. And that's the part that you guys learned yourself that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. That's great, man. Because I mean, I'll link your social medias everywhere in this podcast and even the
Thank you.
shorts. Like, I'm sure when someone looks at your page without having, listened to this conversation, nobody would guess that this is all done by you three who have no professional design or packaging experience, and it's all like done with the help of AI and all these hacky ways. But that's what excites me about like speaking to guys like you, right? It's like the new age founders, they're all about getting it done,
Yeah.
and getting it done fast and in the most hacky ways possible, right? So
Yeah.
that's
I,
that's
w-
that's
I
really
will
inspiring.
say,
Yeah.
one thing is hacky is one aspect of it. And then the other aspect, what we realized is, um, the story and the product everything just feels a lot more authentic because we did it ourselves. Because we knew that every single decision, from whatever we put out to every word that was chosen for, I don't know, an Instagram caption, everything was us and carefully deliberated, carefully thought out as to why we're putting it. But we knew that everything came back to us at the end of the day. There's no other place to point fingers at. If something doesn't work or if something looks bad, it would come right back to us. And that, of course, is good and bad. It means it's difficult and challenging, but it also is good in the sense that we know what is resonating with people and what is not. And if something isn't resonating, then we know that it's us ourselves who need to fix it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just a little thing that we learned and realized along the way.
So when you're starting out, as much as possible, do everything yourselves, just to make sure that nothing gets lost in translation, and you're really controlling your destiny and the mission that you want to put out there and the vision you want to put out.
Exactly. I think it's important. Of course, it's not practical and feasible. Some things have to be outsourced.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to, as first-time founders who are just starting off, to be to be a bit more hands-on. Just because I think the vision for where you want the brand and the product to end up at, only you yourself will know. So it helps to be a bit more hands-on.
Yeah. And just speaking about content, right? You mentioned briefly before and kind of noted it down is that you guys knew very early on while starting this that you have to build a community before you go to market. Why was that so important to you, and how did you go about doing and building that community?
Yeah. When we started this, I think very early on we realized that first and foremost, our friends and family were excited by what we were doing. So that excitement was cool for us to see. And we're like, okay, great. People are excited about us doing something, three guys just getting together and building a perfume brand. It sounds a bit random. But we kind of realized that, hey, actually there's other people who also would find this interesting. So initially it wasn't a very clear focus of, let's build a community. It wasn't a grand mission that we started with. But as we started, building a social presence, we kind of realized a lot of people resonated with what we were doing. We would get messages from people saying, this is really cool. I've been looking for something like this. Or like looking forward to the representation of India in perfumes. Little things like that made us realize, hey, there's a lot more people out there who are bought into this mission than we think. And we owe it to them to take them on this journey with us. They've discovered us now. We can't now leave them hanging for the next 9 months while we figure out how to build a product. Let's take them on this journey with us. I think what we realized is, to be honest, it was hard because we didn't have a product we started posting on social media, I think maybe 6-7 months ago. At that point, we didn't even have a product in. We didn't even have our product locked in. We didn't even have our fragrances locked in. But we knew we had to take people on this journey with us. And that's where the founder story becomes so important. I think a lot of people nowadays in the age of content, we forget that consumers like to resonate with brands, and not just brands, they like to resonate with the people behind the brands. So for us, we felt like, hey, since so much of our personality is into this brand, surely, our community will resonate with us as founders, and vice versa. We as founders would resonate with the community. So let's just build content and let's build community. Let's talk to them directly. And we did that in multiple ways. One is through social media, but we would also do different things. Like we'd ask every now and then we had a landing page on our website before our main website went live, where people could leave details if they're interested in, hearing from us. And when they left their details, we would send them emails, regular updates, almost like update emails saying where we are in the journey. We owe nothing to them, of course, but we felt like it would be good to take them along on this ride with us. And immediately the community then feels more invested. So in our launch in the boutiques last weekend, this was a validation of, this was a hypothesis, right? We didn't know if this would work, but people did come to our booth and they said, hey, I've been following you guys for 7 months. And finally I get to meet you all and I get to smell your perfumes. Thank you. I'm very excited. Just hearing things like that was great for us to kind of realize that, okay, yeah, absolutely. People like, at the end of the day, people like talking to people. It's not consumers talking to brands or brands talking to consumers. It's people talking to people. So that people connection was important.
So even without having a product, for the first 7 months of you deciding to do this, you were able to build that community. That's crazy. And just a question for you and advice for someone who's building a consumer brand today, right? Like, let's go back to the protein bar example, for example. Like, if I've conceived an idea and this is what I want it to be, but I'm like months away from actually having the product in hand, like, what kind of content do I start creating, right? Is it informational content, or is it just vlog style, like, come with me on my journey, like something that you were doing? So what kind of content should we create?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Those are, two of the executional buckets, I would say. But I think first and foremost would be the story of the why. Um, what we learned along the way is what people wanted to see is a lot on the why. Like, what are you guys standing for as a brand? Why are you doing this? And what is your journey like? It's basically the buckets of, as simple and cliched as it sounds, is the who, what, where, when, why, how, all those basic questions. At the end of the day, people want those questions answered when they see a brand that is so new and just starting up. And from there, you can have different executional buckets that you said, which is come along on a day, which is your what, right? Here's what I'm doing. And I'm going to show you everything that I'm going to do in this day in life as a founder. But then there is another style of, which is the educational content. And that can link very closely with the why. And, why we're doing this is because these are the misinformation. This is the misinformation that exists around nutrition and da-da-da. And these are the nutritional things that we as a brand are looking to break. And here's a little nugget that, something along those lines. So I think it comes down to that at the end of the day. Content is, as long as it's centered around your brand's mission and the who, what, where, when, why, there's a lot of ways the content can then look and evolve.
Yeah. I read so much about, like, brands across the world, like some of these brands that don't have anything, like they don't have product, as you mentioned, right? They just have an idea, but they're able to get a ton of pre-orders or interest gathered before, and they're able to go and raise funds based off of that, or they're actually able to raise some sort of like crowd fund just to finance their inventory as well. So I think this is really the way brands are moving forward, where you use content as this distribution platform, as this discovery platform, and take your audience along with you, so that when you launch the product, you already have a customer base, right? That's
Exactly.
I think you guys have executed that really, really well. And just coming on this part, right? So you created content, you had the story, you went into product development, now you have the product, and you recently launched, right? I really wanted to ask you about your go-to-market strategy, because when we think about launches, and I'm not very well versed with luxury brand launches or luxury brand go-to-market strategies, but why did you guys decide to do these kind of like exclusive events rather than, let's say, putting your product at a stockist or like doing like D2C, conventional D2C?
Yeah. So maybe a little context for everyone, which is on how we launched. So we did a pre-launch first in the form of a fragrance cocktail collaboration. There's a cocktail bar called the Elephant Room. They make cocktails inspired by Little India in Singapore. So again, there is a very clear Indian representation through drinks and cocktails. So obviously, we as consumers had known about Elephant Room. We'd gone there before. So when we started, planning our go-to-market, top of the list was, let's do collaboration. Let's collaborate with other brands and establishments who who basically have similar values to us. And of course, for us, I would say, by the way, that's honestly, for us, that's our main approach, especially at this early stage. So for us, when we realized that, okay, Elephant Room makes cocktails inspired by the Indian identity, Singaporean Indian identity, we make perfumes inspired by the Indian identity. why not do something together? What that collaboration looked like, obviously, in our first meeting, we didn't really know, but we just basically reached out and we floated this idea. And of course, Elephant Room, the founder was uh, wonderfully kind enough, but also excited enough to realize that, hey, this is something cool, actually. This is two brands, similar identities. We can do something cool together. So what we jointly came up with was the fragrance cocktail pairing, where there'll be custom cocktails inspired by each of our fragrances, and people can smell the fragrance and sip the cocktail. And the idea is that, of course, as you're smelling the fragrance, your taste of the cocktail changes and evolves slightly. Now, this was cool because obviously Singapore doesn't have too many of such experiences. But also it was important for us because I would say more important from a pre-launch strategy perspective, because it was a good way for people to smell perfumes and experience them in a unique way. For our product, people need to experience it. It's not like clothes that you know your size and you know what it looks like and you can still take a buy generally.
Yeah.
There still needs to be an experiential component of smelling the perfume itself. No matter how much you describe the notes, people want to smell it. So we knew we wanted, before launch, a place for people to smell the perfumes, but in a cool way. Because why do things the ordinary way of just having a place where people can just go smell and leave? Let's have it as an experience. And that's where this collaboration was so important for us. It came in as something that not only are we tapping into Elephant Room, tapping into our community and us tapping into theirs, but we're also giving a way for our community to smell fragrances, but also Elephant Room's community to smell our fragrances. So it's a mutual win-win. And this is obviously, we're keeping this going on till the end of the year. So this is ongoing. But from there is where our actual launch mindset came about, which is when we launch, we need to have a physical place for people to come smell the perfumes and also purchase on the spot. And the boutiques fair in Singapore is a huge event that, it happens annually. And I had visited as a consumer earlier this year. So we thought, you know what, why don't we just aim for that? There's no better place than boutiques fair for us to launch as a brand. Why don't we just aim for that? So that was our target. That was our goal. So when you asked me earlier, how did you know when to launch? We knew when to launch because we knew the boutiques fair was happening in November. So we said, you know what, no matter what, we need to make this happen. So that was the timeline and target we set it at. So looking forward in terms of our go-to-market strategy, of course, we're primarily at the moment direct to consumer through online e-commerce. But we would love to get into retail. We would love to get into a store where, perhaps with other fragrances, we would love to have our niche fragrance there as well. But till we get to that point, we primarily are looking at collaboration. So Elephant Room is one such collaboration. We are looking at other collaborations in the space of music, in the space of, clothing. I think that's the cool thing. As a brand, we realized the best way to grow is by partnering with other brands who share your values. And what we've realized is so many brands and founders are willing to collaborate, are willing to work with you because not just is it a mutual win-win, but it's something cool. Like, again, people thinking outside the box, and collaborations are outside the box.
Yeah. No, that's quite a strategy, man. Because especially in the space that you're playing in, you have such a big story to tell, so much context to give to the consumer, as you mentioned, right? So it's not something where you have a size or something, or it's a normal everyday good. It's something that's a high ticket item as well, right? So you got to have that context. So doing it this way in a platform where you're able to tell the story, I think becomes all the more important, right? But I just want to ask here, right, with what you've done here, with the collaborations and also your soft launch at the boutique, for example, like, did you generate enough revenue for like as much as you'd hoped, or not that much?
No, we did. I would say we did fairly well. We actually, we were discussing this earlier. We sold out of one of our. We have 4 fragrances. We sold out of one of them, and we're almost sold out of another. we did fairly well in terms of a revenue perspective, actually exceeding our initial expectations as well. Um, yeah, I would say a big part of that, of course, was the community angle that we built. Um, and the other aspect that I will say, which for us is key, is that every step of the journey, we wanted to make sure that the quality is of the highest standard. So everything from the physical touch points all the way down to the digital touch points. So the digital touch points are what is important in terms of getting people to come down and smell your perfumes. And then the physical touch point is actually what's important for converting that person who's smelling the perfume into a customer. And we knew that both of those had to be of the highest quality. Every single aspect had to be, we had to give extra thought to it. So for our launch, we really tried to prioritize ensuring that whoever is coming down, they have things to look forward to. So the fragrances are, of course, we feel are of the highest quality, but even just the extra things. It is Christmas season coming up. We're thinking from a consumer mindset. People are coming to shop. They are coming to buy gifts, either for themselves or for others. What can we as a brand do to give them that little extra joy, little extra happiness? Can we give them a little perfume pouch that basically is stuff that they can take as when they're traveling? They can put their perfume in a pouch and take it. Can we make that pouch of the best quality so that at least if, the perfume is one thing, but as they're feeling this pouch, they feel like, oh, this is a nice touch. I feel good about buying this. So little things like that I think was really important for us to try and think about. And of course, it's not like we've nailed everything. There's so much for us to still figure out and learn.
Yeah.
But I think we realized that all these small, the 99% to the 100%, it's that 1% that really makes the difference.
The attention to detail, especially if you're in luxury, right? Any sort of luxury where people are forking out a lot for your product.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of brands. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot, but I've read about a couple of brands in the luxury space, whether that's apparel, that's footwear. What they're doing these days is they're doing the strategy of limited product drops, right? Where they don't manufacture more than a couple of pieces and then move on to a new design entirely, right? So what are your thoughts on that? And is that something that you think is a good strategy in today's time?
It's a good question. Obviously we don't do drops per se. We do have limited stock, but that's more by just pure fact of our of how we're just starting up. I think drops, at the end of the day, there's two things. One thing we learned along this journey so far, because we're trying to build a premium product, luxury brand, exclusivity is real and people value exclusivity. Now, of course, as exclusivity is important, but then there's the other element, which is authentic exclusivity, which is, sometimes you can tell people are being exclusive just because they want to position themselves as luxury. And then the whole thing comes across very inauthentic. Consumer is not going to, it's like you're trying to fool the consumer.
Yeah.
But if you're exclusive for the right reasons, and I think this is what the whole aspect of, sometimes you buy, for example, whiskey and it's small batch. But then if it's small batch whiskey, it costs $600 and you're asking, why is it, what do you mean small batch? But then you understand that, okay, it's small batch because there is genuine craftsmanship that is going behind it. And there's genuine, hours and hours of effort and work that's gone in to create a product that is of exquisite quality. Then you can understand the exclusivity and the fact that something is not easily available. And I think that, I feel, has place in society today. For example, if you're buying a watch, again, that is exclusive because this is someone who's taking in a timeless tradition from 400 years old and basically handcrafting each dial, then you understand why there's only 100 pieces in stock and they come in as a drop, because it takes immense effort and time to build it.
They literally can't produce more, basically, and that's why it's exclusive. That's where it's getting the value.
Exactly. And I think anything that is exclusive and limited edition, because of that, because there is a genuine reason that as a consumer, I actually want that. I want a product that is been, so loved and cared for in the construction process,
Yeah.
then I completely get behind. But then again, if it's a brand that's doing drops because, oh my God, that's what everyone should do. I'm starting an e-commerce brand. Let's do a drop for no reason apart from this is cool and this is what we should be doing. I personally feel that's not an authentic way to connect with an audience.
So don't be exclusive for the sake of being exclusive, because consumers can sniff that out really fast, and that
Yeah,
they won't attach value to that.
exactly.
That's a great trip. I have one last question for you, man, and been a really, really value-packed conversation. Learned a ton, but my question to you is, and I like to ask this to every founder who's building, right? In the next 3 to 5 years, where do you envision Rahasya to be, right? Like where do you envision it to be in the world in terms of product, in terms of where it's distributed? Like, what's your vision?
I think it comes down to our mission. Our mission is to put Indian-inspired niche perfumery on the map. So for us, that means Rahasya is in multiple markets across the world. Obviously, we would love to go into Australia. We'd love to go into UK. We'd love to go into US, the Middle East. And then eventually, of course, our final homecoming would be India. So if you ask me, 3 to 5 years, obviously we'd love to see some, if not all of those goals being hit. From a product perspective, obviously, we do have a fantastic product, at least from our perspective and from what our consumers are saying. But of course, there's always room for improvement. And we want the product, the design, the branding, the packaging, everything will evolve. We want it to evolve to the highest possible quality, to the extent that, we feel like, okay, we've now pushed the boundaries on what we can do.
Yeah.
So again, from a perfume lens, we do want to have more perfumes out there as well. But even from a product category lens, for us, Rahasya is really about representing the Indian, identity. For us, it's through perfumes, but we would love to expand to other product categories as well. And that could eventually be, something around fashion. That could eventually be something around, I don't know, something else. Our focus is on perfumes and always will be on perfumes, but who knows what other tangential pathways could open up. And then the third thing I would say is really on collaboration. For us as a brand, we feel that we are trying to represent the Indian culture and Indian identity through perfumes, but heck, so many people are doing it in their own ways, right? Whether they're a singer, whether they're a musician, whether they're a fashion designer, or whether they're another brand, or, if it's a protein bar brand even, that uses Indian ingredients, right? Everyone is trying to represent their culture in their own way. And for us, we would love, if you ask me 3 to 5 years, we would love to have as many of those collaborations with individuals and brands as possible, because it's about the joint mission that I was saying. So we've started off with Elephant Room, but we would love to have so many more of those with so many other categories and individuals and brands.
Awesome, man. No, I wish you guys all the best. I mean, what you've done in the past, like a year or even less than a year, is like an immense leap of faith. Not many people just, decide to quit their jobs, go travel, learn something completely new that they know nothing about, and then build something so beautiful out of it, with just sheer grit and just using what you have. So I wish you all the best, and thanks a lot for doing this, man. Like, tons of learnings in this for anyone who's trying to build a brand, and for myself as well. So thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Absolutely. I'm just gonna, by the way, I don't even know if we're over time or not, but I just want to say one thing. One thing that helped us massively, and for anyone else who might find this useful, is, and we were talking about this earlier, which is conversations and talking to other brands and learning from other brands. It's been so immensely, similar to what you were saying just now. It's been incredibly helpful for me as well when I look at some of the videos on your page, because again, the learning and the ideas, and the only way we'll grow and learn as people is by talking to other people. So I think it's amazing you do what you do, and I've learned quite a bit as well from looking at some of the videos on your pages. So
thanks.
Yeah,
thanks
my thing I would
man.
say to anyone who watches this is just talk to people. There's so many learnings that you can get from talking to people.
No, thanks a lot, man. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up as well. Like even the other founders that I've interviewed, they've also emphasized a lot on this. Like a lot of the things, a lot of the nuances and the details you'll only know from people who've been there, done that in those exact same situations. And when you're building something, it's already so lonely that
Yeah,
the only real community you have is the fellow founders who are building or have built that sort of a thing that can guide you, right? So.
absolutely.
Uh, Thanks a lot for coming on, and that's why I do this also, man. Honestly, it's not only accelerated learning for me, it's like so many young people have so many bright ideas, but they just don't know where to start, what to do, how to think about some of these things, right? And just sharing that in the world, uh I hope it really benefits someone.
That's, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much for having
Thank you.
me.